So we're going to go ahead and get this bar prep party, as I'll call it, started. If you don't know me already, I am attorney Jasmine Robinson. Born and raised here. Well, not here. It feels like it, but I was born and raised in Richmond, Virginia. Always wanted to be a lawyer because of my crazy family. That's the honest truth. There was a lot of like family law situations that happened growing up, and it just made me realize, I want to help families that are in similar situations. So I went to Hampton University for undergrad, the best historically Black college out there, the best college period on this earth. Love Hampton. If it wasn't for Hampton, I would not have been exposed to my law school, Mercer Law. While at Hampton, I did not do well on the LSAT. I share this proudly. I had a 144 LSAT, probably lower than both of y'all scores. I mean, a 144. I didn't know what I was doing. But the good news is Mercer still gave me a great opportunity. I went down to Mercer, finished my first semester with honors, passed the bar after the first try, graduated with honors, all that good stuff. And here I am. Like I said, I always wanted to do family law, but after doing that for a short while, I had to go back to my true calling, which was helping future lawyers get through the law school admissions process. So Jazz Talks Law got started out of that. And since starting Jazz Talks Law, we have helped future lawyers get over $1 million in law school scholarships, which is crazy. So I'm very happy about that. And I'm also very happy to not only just help future lawyers get to law school, but to help them get through law school. And then, of course, get through the bar exam and become whole attorneys, as I like to call it. So that's just a little bit about my background. And I actually found out some really, really interesting stuff about Mr. Adam here. I mean, this guy, I think he's... If I had to say so myself, I think he's pretty impressive. I mean, I wouldn't have him on this webinar if he wasn't, right? So Adam, first thing first, he is a family man. I think that is a pretty good way to put it.
You say that, but right now we're in my home office and I've like sequestered all our kids in our garage right now. So they're
so they may not have
converted to a family room. So they're watching a movie out there. So they stay away. But I do love them.
Yeah. So he has 3 kids, y'all. And he had
actually
his 3rd.
4. We just had our 4th, but during law school we had our 3rd. So that's where you're getting the 3 from.
Wow. Okay. He had 3 kids, his 3rd kid, while he was in law school. He also worked multiple jobs while he was in law school. He was the editor-in-chief of several journals at his school. He wrote a couple law review articles. For those of you that are in law school right now, you know that is a lot. And then also, he also balanced all of this. He made his own homemade outlines. He, did some audio outlines. And he even found time to go hiking. And I mean, he had a pretty well thought out law school career. He went on to graduate law school, summa cum laude. Then he was top 5%, y'all. Top 5% on the UBE. And the UBE is the Universal Bar Exam. And of course,
uniform bar exam.
Uniform bar exam. Thank you. That's
potato.
Yep, that's how we have him here. We're going to talk more about that. And he studied about 30 to 40 hours a week for the bar exam, roughly 6 weeks, give or take. And he did a lot of that with, once again, his homemade outlines, which were audio, which is the big thing. And I think it's going to innovate the game, seriously, which is how I think Crushendo was birthed. And of course, he'll talk more about that. I'm sure he has some more he can add to that. But that's just a quick introduction. Anything you want to add really quickly?
No, I'm just grateful to be here, and we're happy that you're hosting this, and we definitely appreciate you doing this. So my heart goes out to the people that are studying for the bar right now. Even if you're using audio outlines or using the best techniques, it's not very fun and it's so stressful. And you walk out of there, no matter how much you studied, feeling like you possibly failed, maybe definitely failed. And I mean, even with scoring as highly as I did, I walked out of the bar exam feeling like I'm not sure if I passed. And so I was very elated when I got my score, but if you're feeling overwhelmed or inadequate, it's normal for everybody everywhere. Everybody gets really stressed about it. So,
yeah. Okay, so we're going to just dive into some quick questions and things that, well, no, actually, before we do that, I want to talk a little bit more about my bar prep story, which I think will definitely be motivational for, especially for those who are studying for the bar exam right now. And just so we can have an idea, for those that are studying for the bar exam right now, how many of it is, y'all? I think it was four. Four of you are studying for the bar exam right now. Are you taking, which bar exam are you taking? Are you taking it next week? Or are you taking it July? And there's several of you taking it within the next year. Have you, I imagine you guys know. Oh, hey, Shanika. I imagine you guys know when you're taking it as well by now. So Shanika's taking it in July. Okay. So I took the July bar exam, and just to back up, I want to reiterate this. I had a 144 LSAT. And why am I reiterating that? Because I just knew that standardized testing just wasn't for me. Like, I was convinced, like, I made it to law school, but I had no idea how I was going to make it through the bar exam. I mean, you know, they let me slide on in the entering class or whatnot, but I just kind of told myself, like, just don't think about the bar exam because, you know, that's 3 years from now. You know, just focus on doing well in law school. And thank God I did it that way, because if you allow yourself to get too stressed or too worried about the bar exam as a first year law student, it can end up being a bad situation to make a long story short. So while I was in law school, like I said, first year they told us, you know, just focus on getting good grades, focus on getting internships. So I did those things. 2 a year, similar story. But then I did like mock trial and, you know, added more things to my extracurriculars. I joined the Boss Executive Board, you know, different things like that. Now, 2 a year, and I don't know if they did this for you, Adam, but they started telling us like, okay, you guys need to consider taking bar prep courses your second and third year of law school. And here I am thinking, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that. That was my honest thought on that. I didn't want to take, I didn't feel like I had to take any course that I wasn't genuinely interested in. And some people may disagree with me, and if I failed the bar exam, I probably would tell you not to do that. But I think there's a way where you can prepare for the bar exam once you graduate. And that was the route I chose. And I think that helped my GPA out a little bit as well, because I didn't take, you know, I'm trying to think of one of the courses. Like everyone hated estates. And what was the other big one? Like wills and estates was like the big one that everyone hated. And I was like, yeah, I'll just figure that out, you know, once I graduate. And that is what I did. So to make a long story short, I honestly did not put too much thought into the bar exam until I graduated. I used my 3 years to focus on networking, to focus on getting the GPA I wanted, to focus on my internships, externships, scholarships. You know, I did study abroad programs. I didn't do any major bar prep during school. And then once I graduated, of course, that's when it all began. And it was like, okay, so you're walking across the graduation stage, your family's in town, like everyone's so proud of you, you're graduating law school, like all these things, and you're excited, but then it's like in the back of your mind, you're just like, I mean, I literally have to go back to the library tomorrow. Like, I mean, hooray, but I'm not done. Like, and you know, there's been a lot of conversations about whether the bar exam should be during law school or after law school, you know, a lot of conversations about this, but as of right now, it's still after you graduate law school. But either way, so I literally graduated, was it like a Saturday or Sunday? And then a week later, our bar prep course started. And for some people, they started doing things earlier before the bar prep course began. I did not. I literally started day one, and I shut my life down. Like, I was so upset because my sorority had like a huge event in Atlanta that summer, and I could not attend. And it only happens once a year, and it happened to be in Atlanta this year. And I just told myself I can't go. Like, that was just that. I missed out on so many like social events. I mean, it was a summer. Like, you're taking the July bar exam. There's so many things going on. They call it Hot Atlanta for a reason, right? So there were so many things going on, but I had to literally shut my life down. People didn't know this at the time, but me and my husband had just finished eloping. Yeah, we had just finished eloping. So we were married, still living separately. We had a whole conversation. I don't know why we agreed to this, but we didn't move in together until my bar prep was done. Like, he would come by and bring me food like once a week and, try to spend some quality time with me. But to make a long story short, I had no life while I was studying for the bar exam. But when I was studying for the bar exam in June, because basically you're studying all of June and all of July, and when I was studying for the bar exam in June, I did decide to work for about 3.5 weeks. I was still looking for a job when I graduated. And this opportunity came about where I could just make some extra income on the side. But it was also for a firm that I was actually interested in working for. So I did that for about 3.5 weeks. So if anybody is thinking about doing that, it is possible. It is more challenging, but here I am, past the bar after the first try. So everything was going, as good as I could expect. I had a set schedule. I was reporting to Emory Law School. Of course, I went to Mercer, but my bar prep course was taught at Emory. So I was driving to Emory, was it 4 or 5 days a week? We had class from 9 to 1. Sometimes our lectures would be in person. Sometimes they would be recorded lectures, but either way, I was there. I didn't miss any lessons except for one. And I'm going to talk about that one that I missed in a second. And the other cool thing that I did, I was also a bar prep liaison for my course because, for one, you got a little bit of extra money at the end of the course. But two, it also kept me accountable with being there because I had to be there early to cut the lights on, to cut the projector on, things like that. So July came. Everything was going fine. I would go to bar prep. I would come home. I would study from 2 to 10. I would have lunch and then study from like 2 to 10 every day. 10 o'clock, I watched an episode of House of Cards. And by 11 o'clock, that was literally my routine every single day. And I think it was so, looking back, it was so important for me just to have that 1 hour at 10 o'clock where I wasn't doing anything bar prep related. And come 11 o'clock, I would sleep. And the next morning, I would get up at like 5:36. I would go to the gym. And I would literally, I think, honestly, Adam, I think what you're doing is so good because I would literally listen to some of the bar prep lessons while I was in the gym. Like, they had them, like, you could watch the replays. I would literally listen to them while I was like on the treadmill or whatever. I would get back to my apartment, take a shower, go back to the school for the lesson the next day. That was literally my life. So everything was going as expected. No life, bar prep, gym, that was it. And then July 4th weekend came, which is like the crucial midpoint for bar prep studies. It's where people start feeling like they're behind. They start feeling like, I haven't been doing what I'm supposed to do, and it's time to really buckle down. And I finished up my work for the day. I actually finished early because they gave us like a half a day type of situation since it was like July 4th weekend. So my husband was like, well, you've done all your work for the day, so let's go to the movies. We went to the movies. I get home from the movie, and I'm in the worst possible pain of my life. Like, my husband thinks I'm pretty dramatic, but like, and at first he didn't really believe me, but once he realized, like, okay, like, you're in pain, like the worst possible pain in my life, to make a long story short, he had to rush me to the hospital. I had to have emergency surgery, and it was basically on my appendix. And that led to me not being able to study for 3 whole days. 3 whole days, y'all. I'm on medicine, so it's not like I'm just up looking at the wall. Like, I'm literally like just basically sleep, you know, trying to heal all this. And I'm like freaking out. That was the one class I missed. And the good news, the class I missed was family law. So I don't know if you guys remember, but I mentioned earlier that I wanted to do family law, right? So if I had to miss a class, I'm so happy it was it was family law, because, you know, I mean, I think that was honestly a blessing in disguise that that was the one class that I had to miss. But that was my life. And so the surgery came, and my mom had to send me like a care package. She brought me a lap desk so that I could continue studying. About 2 days later, I had like ice on my stomach, like a package they gave us. Like, I had to push through. I had no choice. Like, I had to stop taking my medicine because it made me sleepy. I had to just keep the ice on my stomach. And that was my life for the last 3 weeks before the bar exam. And now that I think about it, being that one of the issues I was having is sitting up because of the stitches on my stomach and, you know, trying to look at my books and things, I'm wondering now if I had those audio outlines that you have, Adam, with Crushendo, that probably could have helped my life so much more. I mean, it doesn't matter now, right? But just thinking that probably could have helped me out a whole lot. But to make a long story short, I get to bar exam day. By this point, I'm all healed up. In Georgia, you have 6 essays. First off, bar exam is 2 days. 2 days, not just one. So you go home and you still have a whole nother day to go back. And it's a full day, like 9 to 5. So day 1, you have 6 essays. You have 4 in the morning, 2 in the evening. And I mean like an essay, like long. And then day 2 was the multiple choice question. 200 multiple choice questions, covering everything from criminal law to property law to civil procedure. I mean, covering everything. And they say that, and not even they say, I say that the multiple choice questions are the hardest part. They are so tricky. Just thinking back when I was studying for the bar exam, when I was, you know, doing all those multiple choice questions and things, every time I would do like a practice section or whatever, I would always score in the bottom percentage while I was studying for the bar exam. So if that is you right now, if you are scoring in that bottom percentile, I hate that they do that, to be honest. I hate that they show like, oh, you're scoring in the top 20%. That's so discouraging. But thank God I didn't let that discourage me, because all those practice simulations, 20%. Like, I was at the very end. But guess what? The only day that mattered was test day. That's the only day that matters. So went into the bar exam the first day, went into the bar exam second day, and half of the people at the bar exam got sick. I can't make this up. You can Google it. So they provide, so in Georgia, most of the law schools that are in Georgia, or not most, all of them, they cater lunch for their students. So there was like a Mercer Law room. This is a big, huge building. I mean, it's hundreds and thousands of people there. So Mercer had his own room, Georgia State had their own room, and so on. And they cater lunch. So during your lunch break, you just go there and eat. Thank God I didn't get one of the sandwiches that were, I don't want to say poison, but that, you know, they were.
It didn't look good.
Yeah. But literally, well, I didn't even notice, but because I was so focused on my, you know, my test or whatever. But people were just like running to the bathroom, like during the exam after lunch. It was crazy. But to make a long story short, that is pretty much the quick, full version of my bar prep journey. I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions about that. And the coolest thing though, and I think this is going to set the tone for our discussion tonight. After the bar exam was over, I was talking with one of my classmates. You know, everyone talks about it. You know, some people do, some people don't, but for the most part, you're going to have some type of conversation about it. And I was talking with one of my classmates, maybe like a week or two later, and he told me, he said, Jasmine, the night before the bar exam, I shredded all of my materials. I was like, what? Like, that's bold. Like, I was like, why did you shred your materials? He said, because I wasn't taking this test again. I was like, okay. Like, that is the mindset you need going into that bar exam. Like, this is a test you don't want to take more than once. This is a test that you have to take if you want to practice law. If you want to be an entrepreneur, like one of our participants does, maybe not, but this is a test you want to be one and done. Of course, if you decide to take it in another state or something like that, then you may have to take it again. But for the most part, this is one and done. You want to go in there with the mindset of, I have to pass this exam because I don't have my materials anymore after this. So I thought that was really admirable. I thought that was really brave of him. Would I have done that? Absolutely not. Because I mean, I just couldn't. I still have my bar prep materials. Adam, do you still have yours? Like, I still, like, I just have them. Like, I don't ever see myself getting rid of them. Like,
I don't have any from the program that I was using for my practice questions. I got rid of those. I didn't shred them or burn them or defecate on them or do anything.
Yeah.
But I did not keep the paper.
Yeah. I still have like my main book, like, cause it's just like kind of like it's a reminder of what I did. I think that I just can't get rid of that. But that is pretty much the sum of my bar prep story. So let's start with just some basic questions. And if you guys have any questions as we go along, feel free to drop those in the chat. Someone asked, how long did she study for the bar exam? So I studied for about 2 months, give or take. Okay, so first thing first, what is the bar exam? Why is it so hard? So the bar exam is basically the test you have to take in order to practice law. There's been a few random exceptions that have come across more recently, which I don't like, being that I had to suffer through the bar exam. But I want to say about 98% of the time, you have to take the bar exam to practice law in any state. So this test, the bar exam, is, and each state is a little different, but for the most part, it's a mixture of multiple choice and essay type questions that test your understanding of different subjects of the law. So criminal law or civil procedure or what have you. Like, there's a broad range of subjects. So in Georgia, you have about 8 subjects that are tested on the multiple choice portion. And then with the essay questions, it can be anywhere from, I think it's like 16 essay topics that could be tested. And of course, throughout our course, they would make it clear, like, these ones are tested more than this one, but at the end of the day, you have to be prepared for all of those. So I think I kind of answered both parts, like what the bar exam is and why it's so hard. It's so hard because you have like 16 essay questions, possible essay questions, or topics, I should say. And then you have 8 different multiple choice question types that you can get. And it's 200 questions. And you have to do all of this within a time period. I think that might actually be the worst part, the time period. So you have, like, just like the LSAT, you have like a minute and 20, 30 seconds per question, something like that. And I think it's also, the bar exam is also really hard just for the same reason that the LSAT is hard, because it requires, preparing for the bar exam, one, requires strategy, just like the LSAT does. And two, it requires discipline, just like the LSAT, just like law school, strategy and discipline. And Adam, of course, is here to give you guys the strategy, which Crushendo provides. But at the end of the day, that discipline, you know, when you had surgery and a week later, you still have to study for this test that's happening in 2 weeks, whether you're happy or not, you know, that's where that discipline has to kick in. And I honestly think that's what makes it so hard. If you had like a whole year to prepare for the bar exam and, you know, it was something way more lax, you know, I think we'll have way more lawyers. But they are really testing, like, who wants this? Who really wants to practice law? It's an honor to be a lawyer. It's an honor to be a part of this profession. And I think that is why it is so hard. So, second question, should I worry about the bar exam before attending law school? Okay, so happy you guys asked that question. You guys love to contact me and give me excuses for why you shouldn't go to law school. And one of y'all's favorite excuse is the bar exam. And it's something along the lines of, oh, well, I want to be a lawyer, but, you know, I don't think I'm going to pass the bar exam. So, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do it. Like, no. Like, can we take the LSAT first? Can we visit law schools first? Can we get accepted to law school? Can we make it through our first semester of law school? Like, can we take baby steps? I think sometimes when it comes to law school or not, we as humans, sometimes we think big picture. You know, we think about what has to happen, you know, 3-4 years from now versus focusing just the first step. You know, why focus on step 20 when we haven't even made the first step yet? Oh yeah, of course I'm coming for your excuses. So I just want you guys to know that, yeah, the bar exam is something you're going to have to worry about, but that's minimally like 3 years from now. And when the time comes, you're going to have companies like Crushendo around who got y'all, who are going to give you everything you need. And you provide the discipline and it's going to take care of itself. Like literally, I told myself I'm not worrying about the bar exam until I graduated law school. Like, I didn't worry about the bar exam until I graduated law school. Why are you worrying about the bar exam and you're not even in law school yet? There's like, there's no, that's not an excuse going forward. And I'm so happy that, you know, I'm able to eliminate you guys' excuses. That's one of my favorite things to do. Okay. But there is one caveat that I want to bring up. So a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, but the only time I would tell someone to think about the bar exam is if, for example, they have a criminal record. So for the most part, I don't want to say for the most part, I don't think I've come across any like murderers or any, you know, anyone that has committed any like serious crime or anything that could potentially keep them from joining the legal profession. But that is like the only instance I would like worry about the bar exam before going to law school. Because like, what's the point of going to law school if you can't take the bar exam? Which is a test you have to be approved to take. So, but for the most part, I'm sure most of y'all aren't murderers. You probably, you know, you're not like El Chapo Jr. or anything like that. So I don't think you guys have anything to worry about. You guys do not have an excuse for why you shouldn't go to law school. So the next question I get a lot is, when do you prepare for the bar exam? And it's funny because I think someone asked that in the chat, and I said I studied for 2 months. So I think the first thing, and I'm a lawyer, so I kind of can't help it, but I want to focus on the word prepare. So I think there's 2 types of preparations when it comes to the bar exam. there's mental preparation, and then there's physical preparation. So mental preparation is literally when you prepare your mind to prepare for this test. Prepare your mind to prepare for this test. That's like, okay, let me try that again. When you prepare your mind to study for this test, when you prepare your mind to study for 10, 12 hours a day, when you prepare your mind to not have a life while your sorority's largest event is in town, when you prepare your mind to zone out any distractions that are possible, there's a mental preparation that comes into play. When you prepare your mind to not worry about falling in the low 20 percentile while you're studying for the bar exam, when you prepare your mind to not focus on your classmate when you're studying for the bar exam that just keeps, bragging about how well his bar prep studies are going. So you have to mentally prepare yourself. And that's something you can start doing like now. Mentally prepare yourself to zone out any distractions. Mentally prepare yourself to be disciplined. This is something I talk to you guys about all the time, because if you can establish discipline today and live a disciplined life, it's going to be that much easier for you when you are actually studying for the bar exam. Because I strongly, strongly, strongly believe that people that fail the bar exam, they're not dumb. They're very smart. It comes down to, in a lot of situations, that level of discipline, that level of focus. Can they really say they gave it their all when they were studying? And I would say at least 8 times out of 10, it's, I could have studied a lot harder than I did. All right. And then, of course, you have those physical preparations. So for the most part, I think someone was asking, should you study a year out? And I see Adam kind of chimed in there. So I studied for 2 months, for most people, when you graduate law school, that's pretty much the trend. You study from like when you get that law degree up until the bar exam. But then you have some people who say, for example, I don't want to take the July test. Like, I want to enjoy my summer. So they decide to take the February exam. And that gives you more so not a full year. That gives you about like 7-8 months to prepare for the bar exam. So you just have to pick like what works best for you. All right. So the next question I get a lot, should I pick law schools based on where I want to attend the bar exam? And I think this is a great question. But I think the best way I can talk through this is just giving my example. So I'm from Richmond, Virginia, been in Virginia my whole life. And I knew I was going to Georgia for law school, but I told myself, how we create our own plans and they get ruined, of course. But I told myself that I was taking the Virginia bar and moving back to Virginia. Like, that was my plan after I graduated. Of course, I went to a Georgia law school. After my first year, going into second year, I'm like, okay, I'm starting to like Georgia a little bit. And then next thing you know, I'm married. I live here in Atlanta, and Atlanta has like adopted me. So I say that to say that you can pick your law school based on where you think you're going to take the bar exam, but you don't know what's going to happen in 3, 2, 4 years from now, right? Like, I think what's more important is the other factors, like which school has the best programs for me. And if it happens to be a school that's not really on your target for bar prep, but if that is a better school, a better scholarship, or what have you, that's your bar prep's company's job to prepare you for the bar exam, whether you whether you attend a school in state where that bar exam is held or not. And then the last question, do you have to take the bar exam? No. So I think a lot of people get annoyed by this, but some people use Esquire a little too soon. And I'm trying to say this as nicely as possible. So, and it's funny because I made this mistake too. And one of my mentors, she called me out real quick. I graduated law school, thought I was all cute and stuff. And I posted a picture and I put Jasmine Robinson Esquire. And my mentor, she was like, not yet. Put JD. And I was like, huh? You know, it was honestly an honest mistake. But what I'm getting at is when you graduate law school, you get those initials JD for Juris Doctorate behind your name. When you pass the bar exam and you're an actual attorney or a whole attorney, like I like to say, that's when you add that Esquire behind your name. So do you have to take the bar exam? If you want Esquire behind your name, then yes. But if, for example, you are not getting your law degree to practice, you're getting it to maybe help you with some other ventures and things you have going on, you know, then hey, you don't take the bar exam. You know, with Jazz Talks Law, for example, I don't necessarily need a law degree for Jazz Talks Law, and I'm sure Adam doesn't necessarily need a law degree. I'm sorry, doesn't necessarily need to take the bar exam for Crushendo. But
it helps a little for credibility,
yeah, well,
right? Take this test, I've never taken it, and you know,
yeah, I take that back.
But you know, it's not strictly required. No one interviewed that I have.
Yeah, I take that back. Yeah, you definitely need at least one bar exam under your belt with your line of work. But for Jazz Talks Law, for example, I don't necessarily had to have passed the bar, but I do think it helps when people really recognize, you know, my credentials and they see, you know, that I've been through the entire process and I can help people from the beginning to the end. But yeah, whether you take the bar exam or not, that's totally a personal decision. I will say though, I know someone who decided not to take it right out of school. And it's been about 3-4 years and they still haven't taken the bar exam, and they had initially planned to take it a year after. And that's because life started to happen, and, you know, they got into few other ventures, and, you know, things just started happening, and they haven't gotten back to doing it, and they wish they would have just did it straight out of law school. So that's just some background information on the bar exam. So now what we're going to do is turn it over to Adam for all the good strategy. You know, I'm here for the discipline. I'm here for the motivation. I'm here to let y'all know if I did it, y'all can do it 10 times better, all that good stuff. But now we're going to talk some strategy with Adam. And I'm just going to turn my camera off, but I'll still be here in the background.
All right, a little voice inside our heads. I'm actually going to share a screen with you really quick. And I'll walk you through a little demonstration of Crushendo as well, but I wanted to start with a little teaser to just really hook you in. This was an email we got last summer, and just for a little bit of context, we launched Crushendo in terms of the full-on bar prep suite in May of last year, which is really late to the game for the July administration of the bar exam. And we had some success getting students to pick up, in particular, audio outlines. We had people using Kaplan, Barbary, Themis that weren't necessarily happy with how their experience was going, and so they bought our audio outlines as a supplement to those. We did have a few that just bought our straight up full suite with all our practice questions. But the biggest complaint we got over the summer, and that we've gotten since, is just along the lines of, I wish I'd known about this earlier. I wish I knew about this as a 1L. And we got this particular email, which I thought was pretty fun. She was pretty upset. Can I ask why you haven't marketed this large scale? I have a $3,500 prep course, which in my mind is pure robbery, by the way, that cannot compare to the concise elements as discussed in these outlines. They are honestly the most memorable by design. So I love this email. It's like my favorite email that I've gotten. We've gotten fan mail before, but this is my favorite because of the complaint aspects to it. So hopefully that's enough to hook you in. I know we've already been going over 30-40 minutes and you have many important things to do, but hopefully that gets you interested enough to pay attention to this next little bit and stay with us. I'll get to demonstration in a minute. I'm actually going to toggle back just so you can look at me and Jerem, just to give you a little history on Crushendo, because I think the history is kind of different. My bar prep experience was a lot different than Jazz's was, and she did so many things really well in her bar prep, notwithstanding the curveballs life threw at her. I don't know if you paid close attention to her story, but she was very dedicated and disciplined. She put in the time and the effort in the weeks leading up to the bar. She did, it sounded like, ample practice questions, which you just can't get around that. Taking practice questions is so vital to passing the bar. She went to the gym when she could. And also, you can get this vibe when you're talking to Jazz that she's a positive person, right? And she is a grateful person. And those things are invaluable when you're trying to handle a very stressful situation. And I know she says she was consumed by her books and she kind of locked herself away and everything, but I got to think that she kept a good attitude. And research shows the power of positive thinking. It's so helpful for being able to process quickly and also to be able to memorize material. And so that's something that she had going for her. And she had plenty of reasons to doubt herself, but she overcame those things. You know, she mentioned how she got a 144 on the LSAT. And that didn't hold her back. She didn't let that number define her. And so I think there are some really important lessons in her story. As for my own story, as was mentioned, I had 3 kids while I was going to law school. I had my 3rd during law school, and he was a chronically poor sleeper. And so life was, there was just a lot to juggle. And when I was studying for the bar, I was actually working as a law clerk for a law firm as well. And so it was really busy. And I ended up using this technique that I had started during law school and refined over the years. And that technique has evolved into what Crushенdo's become. And the basic idea came for it because I used to be a TV reporter before I went to law school. I worked for a CBS affiliate, and then I spent some time as a corporate trainer and instructional designer. So I've always been passionate about education. And when I got to law school and finals were coming around, there was just so much material to memorize. It was very overwhelming, and I didn't want to lock myself in the library all the time. I needed to go to the park with my kids. I needed to help clean the house, do dishes. I needed to take care of my own health by going to the gym or hiking or golfing. And so what I ended up doing is I made some outlines in audio form. And I found that any given class, if you're really careful about how you write it, you can sum up 90 to 95% of what you really need for that exam in an hour or less, which might sound crazy because you spend a whole semester going over so much doctrine, right? But when push comes to shove, really what you're going to be tested on, at least the vast majority of it, is just going to boil down to an hour or less of very tightly written outlines. And so I got all my outlines to under an hour, and I broke them into chunks. I didn't just listen to one full hour and then listen to that one full hour again. I listened to it in small subsections. And so I was able to listen to those chunks on repeat, and they were more digestible. If you study different learning methodologies, something that's been found to be really effective is this concept of chunking, where you're taking one chunk at a time. It's like you're building, one way we describe it in some of our tips and tricks videos that you can find on YouTube, is you're building with Lego bricks. You know, you don't assemble everything all at once. You know, you build the car, you build a wall, you build another wall, you build a roof, rather than building a little piece of each part at a time. And so I was building a wall and building another wall and then building a roof by listening to one little section of my audio outline on repeat until I mastered it. As I went through law school, I had some classmates that found out about my audio outline, some friends from a study group in particular that were really interested in them. And I'm like, really, you want to listen to my voice like all day? That's like super weird, or on your commute. So I shared them out. I mean, I think one important thing to remember, and if you're in law school right now or going to be in law school, is to not get wrapped up in some perception of just being hyper competitive. Collaboration is vital, even when you're competing against people for grades, because more important than grades or anything in terms of performance in law school are the relationships you create and the networking you create. And that's worth, to me, I mean, you can't put a price tag on the relationships that I created through my study group and through the help that we gave each other. Anyways, getting back to my story, I apologize for that little digression, but I do think that's a very important thing to remember. I think we get sometimes too competitive, and it holds us back as people from reaching our potential. Another thing that that I kind of innovated as I was going to law school is I recognized that in order to keep everything together, it's helpful to have like a little summary audio that you could listen to at the end to just give you a bunch of hooks back to the big material. So you're not listening to everything again, but you're listening to something that puts the bigger picture and helps draw out the really important things. And so I started doing that. And so I did this all through law school. It paid great dividends. I was able to, and I kid you not, I'll just give you a couple examples. So for example, with my tort law exam, so when people are suing each other over money, like personal injury, that's torts. And most of you probably already knew that, so I apologize. But for those of you that are just thinking about law school, just some context there. I kid you not, I spent 2 days solid just at the gym shooting hoops. Like I was just doing free throws, and I got really good. Like I'm not a very good basketball player, but I was getting like 20 free throws in a row, you know, by the end of it. And I was just listening to my audio outlines, and it did wonders in mitigating my anxiety. I wasn't super stressed. I felt really good and healthy. There's been a lot of research about the importance of doing physical activities as you study. It just boosts your ability to function mentally and physically, obviously, as well, and makes you feel good about yourself. And so one way I looked at it was, look, I might not even do really well on this test, but at the very least, I'm going to feel good about my body. And so I used that to comfort myself. And then I ended up getting a 4.0 in that class. And I remember going through that exam, and I could repeat verbatim everything that was in my outline. And I don't have a crazy iron trap, steel trap memory, but just the process of exposing myself 7 to 10 times on repeat to that very condensed outline just made it a part of who I was. And so I used that all through law school. It was very helpful, in particular for exams that were closed book. And then when the bar exam came around, I used the traditional bar prep course. And just to be completely candid, I used Themis. And you'll notice there's a lot of similarities for all the traditional bar prep courses. They all have practice questions, and you've got to have those. And then they all have ways of delivering the basic information that you need to learn and study and retain. And they had the information, but it wasn't in a way that I could use my methodology. So I dumb things down, I synthesized things, and then I recorded my notes, and I went hiking. I went hiking in the mountains a ton in the weeks leading up to the bar. I also like to go golfing, and I'm kind of obsessed with baseball. And so it's kind of weird, like I'd go to a baseball field and just throw baseballs up and hit them. And I probably spent about half my time doing practice questions, and the other half of my time just listening and enjoying the outdoors and sunshine and helping around the house. And so the bar prep experience for me was actually really positive. I felt really good about myself, and I felt like I was able to keep things in balance so it didn't hurt my family. Like I didn't have to disconnect from them. And so it was a huge blessing. I had some friends during that time that approached me, and they're like, oh, I just want to use your audio outlines. Like, can I buy them from you? And because I just made them for myself, for my personal use, I didn't feel comfortable sharing them at that point because of copyright issues potentially. But I noticed, like, hey, maybe there's something out there. Maybe there's a way that I can share this with others, and it can be a blessing for them, like this approach was a blessing for me. And so I kind of put that in the back of my mind, and went in, took the bar. It was mostly uneventful, but I will say one thing, because I just think it's like super weird and kind of funny. The place where our bar exam was administered was right by a baseball field, and I like always have a bucket of baseballs in my car. And so this might be like the weirdest thing ever, but can you imagine someone going to the morning of their bar exam and then during lunch, like, oh, I'm going to go over to that baseball field and just go hit baseballs for a half hour? And that's what I did. And I was listening to my outlines again. And I just remember getting back into the afternoon. And usually, you know, afternoon is when your metabolism after lunch, you can kind of get into a lunch coma, and people start getting sleepy. I usually get sleepy around like 2 or 3, and that's kind of heart of bar exam time. And so having done that little exercise and listened was such a huge help to me. And I think of, my bar exam experience, that afternoon is really what ended up setting me apart, because things were just flowing and I just had a lot of energy and vitality in what I was doing. And I credit a lot of that to the exercise that I got and the fun that I was having. I was thinking, if I don't pass the bar, like, at least I'm having a good time, and I had some really good hits. So anyway, so that's a little bit about my experience and how Crushendo came about. Now, after law school, I went and practiced law, and I still practice law, but I had this thought in the back of my mind that maybe I needed to do something with this idea of audio outlines and the methodology of just, small chunks, repeat over and over while doing something you enjoy. And, when you create something, it's far more memorable than when somebody gives it to you. The best way to learn is to teach, is what people tell you. And so some great advice you'll get from everybody is, when you're going through law school, make your own outlines, right? Make them your own. And so I would say, if you don't use Crushendo, try this approach of recording notes and creating your own outlines and listening to them. If you don't take anything else away from this, like, do that. And that will help you significantly. I really believe that. And so I have this problem, right, where I'm creating a commercial product where we're giving people, not like spoon feeding them, but kind of everything that they need to know, but they're not getting the benefit of having created it like I created it. And so I had this question of, how do I create something that can be memorable and engaging and can become like somebody's own outlines just through the exposure to it, so it's not just another outline out there. And so I spent considerable time researching different memorization techniques and methodologies, and had some really good ahas in that process, and looked heavy into mnemonics. And in particular, the method of Loki. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. I'm just curious. Any of you heard of the method of Loki before? You can put it down there, and Jerem, if you see anything pop, that'd be great. Okay, Thea's heard of it. Okay, so in a nutshell, the method of Loki leverages your spatial memory, which has been shown to be among your more powerful memories. So like when you walk into a building, and you walk out of a building, you can kind of see in your mind's eye the layout of that building. You can walk into it again through your mind, and you can remember some of the things in those rooms. And so this is old. It's as old as the Socratic method, but way cooler than it, and way more useful in my mind. Though there is some utility to the Socratic method, but the method of Loki, or memory palaces or memory journeys, are fantastic for memorizing things. And they also give you, when you're listening to the audio, an opportunity to create while you're listening, because you're not just listening, but you're imagining places and things that are described in the audio. And that's your own creation. We're not giving that to you. We do have some pictures in our written stuff that you can that can help prime the pump, if you will. But the method of Loki is really cool. So we incorporated that into our material, and then we took the basic idea that I had about summary audio at the end of a class or a course, or audio outlines, and we've evolved that now to become audio flashcards, which, as far as I'm aware, no other company uses audio flashcards, where you're asked key questions and it pauses long enough for you to think through or verbalize your answer. So somebody asked earlier about what makes Crushendo different. All that stuff that I just talked about, the condensed, repeatable, digestible audio outlines that are highly memorable and lush with mnemonics. I mean, you can't get that anywhere else through any other bar prep course. We have hundreds of proprietary mnemonics. Another thing that sets us apart is just our price point. I mean, you saw that email that I put up. Somebody had dropped $3,500 on a bar prep course. Ours is only $790. For the entire suite. Another difference, other bar prep courses, you pay several $100s of a deposit and you don't get access until a few months before the bar exam. That's traditionally what happens. And there's a few problems with that. One, you're committing to something that you've never even used before. And two, it just costs a lot of money. I mean, you're talking hundreds of dollars just for a deposit to lock you in. So you don't want to back out later. Oh, and another thing about that whole process is you've got student reps who have never used the product that have this conflict of interest, that are pushing it on other students and having them buy it. And so, but they don't even know if it's any good. They've heard some things and there's social proof and there's good marketing and everything like that, but they haven't used the materials. And so where we're different there is we give people access immediately. We give them access immediately and forever to our materials, and that includes all our updates. So what that allows you to do is you can get our materials even pre-law, or even while you're going, you're in your first year of law school and your first class is that first semester, and you can use our bar prep materials for your torts, for your contracts, for your con law, and you can see how they're working for you. And one thing that's really interesting, though our materials are geared at the bar exam and they're kind of custom carved for the uniform bar exam, we've seen immense academic success among students who use them as supplements for their particular courses. And the ideal way to go about using them mid-semester is you get the outline early and you listen to them, you listen to the outline during the beginning part of the semester to really get grounded in a really solid foundation of the black letter law for the course that you're in. You get the big picture. And then when you're in class, you're not stressed about the fundamentals, everything that will be on the bar. You've already got that, like you know that as well as you'll need to know it. And so you can devote your time and attention during class to listen very carefully to your academic judge, your professor, and try to figure out, what are their hobby keys? What are the nuances that this professor cares about? And I'll keep track of that. And I have ample time to do that because I'm not worried about the nuts and bolts. I've already got that through Crushendo. And students have used that approach, have found great success. And you can look at the reviews that are on Google or Facebook. And also people have blogged about their experience. They've been so excited about Crushendo, both on LinkedIn and independently on other blogs. There's a blogger named Tess Rogers who has Rid of Tess that put a little bit about her experience. Property was her struggle course and she was really worried about it. And she ended up doing really well in that class using Crushendo. And so though our stuff isn't made specifically for law school, it has proven so helpful that now we get most of our sales from 1Ls, which I think is very telling. And again, you get lifetime access. And so that means after you pass and crush the bar, you can refresh your recollection anytime down the road. So it's like, oh yeah, I remember I did family law when I took the bar, but I haven't done that for years. And now I've got this potential client who wants me to do some family law stuff for them. And before I go and meet with them, I want to be somewhat competent in it. And so I'm going to just go to the gym during lunch or listen on my commute to my updated, refreshed audio outlines from Crushendo for family law. And in an hour, I basically rebooted my memory of those things. And in addition to the audio outlines, you also get the practice questions right away. And they're actual bar questions that have been used on the uniform bar exam. We actually already have live on our site the essay questions that were used in 33 states on the uniform bar exam last July. And you can look through the actual grading sheets for those questions. And so there is so much that sets us apart from other bar prep companies. Part of the reason for that, all these differences, is one, I'm pretty fresh out of law school, so I've got fresh eyes on this age-old problem. Two, we live in a day of just technology being abundant, and as a millennial, I'm well versed in technology, and so a lot of our overhead costs we've been able to mitigate through that process. And anyway, so there's just so much that separates us. Maybe I can get you into a little bit of a demonstration. I apologize if I'm going a little long. You just jump in, Jazz, if I need to be quiet. You still there? Oh, okay, I think she might have muted her mic.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you just
I'm here.
cut me off when I gotta stop yapping. You're in charge of this show, so I get excited when I talk about some things and I just keep going. All right, so I talked about. Say that again.
Based on the chat, they're enjoying you, so keep
going. Oh, okay. All right, I'll keep going. I appreciate you guys enjoying me. I'm kind of a quirky dude, so I appreciate your patience with that. So we talked about how Crushendo came about, just kind of like the genesis through my own personal experience that paid dividends for me and has made me passionate about it. We've talked about what makes Crushendo different, the mnemonics, the audio emphasis, and then also the price point and the lifetime and immediate access. A couple of things that are exciting about the future for Crushendo. We've got Android and iOS apps that are in the cooker and will probably be live in time for this next July, which is really exciting. And, you know, we couldn't have made so much progress so quickly without social proof, without people putting great reviews and blogging about their experiences. And so we're eternally indebted to students who have used Crushendo and who have liked it and have shared it with others, because you really can't innovate without people being willing to take some risks and try something new, right? And then if they have a good experience, talking about that experience. The bar prep market is so saturated with different bar prep companies. And there's just so many people out there who are clamoring for specifically your attention. And so we are so indebted to people who have shared their experiences with Crushendo. It's really, I mean, you can kind of control the success you have in life, but so much of it is contingent upon what other people do with the choices they make. And I'm grateful for the people that have made choices that have helped Crushendo to do well. We also have some payment plans that are coming out soon, so you won't have to necessarily drop $790 right away. You can just pay a little bit each month and pay it off. We found that to be one of the barriers to entry that we're trying to get over. And then also, we're not content with the bar exam because this is going so well. We're planning on doing the CPA exam and a nursing license exam soon. So let me get into, without further ado, a little bit of a demo. So I'm going to go over to the website, and hopefully, let's see, you can all see it. Jazz, are you seeing that? Did I do it right?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, perfect. So this is just our landing page here, and it reminds you of just a couple of things that I talked about and gives some examples. I want to just zero in on this picture here on the right. It comes from our constitutional law outlines, and we actually had those outlines reviewed by this study guru named Aaron Richardson, and what he said was super nice and generous about us. And so he reviewed these outlines here, and I just want to kind of explain what's happening. So there are different rights that you have, right? And the government cannot step on those rights unless there is legitimate reason. And the strength of the reason differs depending on the right. Not all rights are created equal. Some rights are afforded tremendous protection. Others are afforded less protection. And so what you see on the right here is a house of rights that uses the method of Locus, where you walk into this building and on the first floor, you have rights that are protected by rational basis. And you've got all these symbols that that are connected to key rights. And so you've got, you've got a stethoscope, and you've got USA to Tonga, and then you've got this sparkling book of law, and what's going on with that. And so that's all explained within the outline itself. But the idea is you walk in and you visualize all these things, and those become memory hooks, and they're all protected by rational basis. And so chunking is being employed and the method of Locus at the same time, because everything that has to do with rational basis, you're finding it on that floor. And so you have that picture in your head. And then you go upstairs and you go to the rights that are protected by intermediate review, and those are more robust, right? You've got a burning flag there. What's up with that? You've got some things on the table. And then upstairs you have some rights that are protected even more rigorously. You have those that are protected by strict scrutiny. And then there's this little closet that says keep out, and behind there you find all the privacy rights, and you find all these different symbols of that. And so this is an example of the method of Locus that we employ. And now, while we have our audio emphasis, we encourage people to read along that first time they listen through, so that they can get these visuals in their heads. They can also see the structuring of the actual outlines, and make sure they're listening in a way that they're not mishearing something, right? There's, depending on how the voiceover is going, you might mishear something. And if you mishear it and you mishear it over and over again, that's a fatal flaw. And so we encourage people the first time to read through and listen along. Or if that's too much for them, to just read through, and ideally read through out loud. Because when you read out loud, it just creates another memory hook. So we added a bunch of pictures to our outlines because students wanted them. I mean, Crushendo is continuously getting better because of feedback from our students. Initially, we had no pictures because we were just looking at audio, and then we thought, okay, we should give people the script so they can read along and make sure they're understanding it. And then somebody said, you know, I love the audio, but it would be cool if there were some pictures. And so boom, we got some pictures to go with our mnemonics. I'm going to go into the Crush board, which is the interface that students use to access all our content. And by the way, we've got some tips and tricks videos available on our Crush board that anyone can get just by registering on our website for free. And those go through the uniform bar exam, breaks it down by each part, the MBE, the MEE, and the MPT, and has just some great tips. I'll give you one that's from here that I'm really passionate about. On the bar exam, on the multiple choice part, you have exactly 108 seconds per question on average. But when you practice, you want to practice more aggressively than that. We recommend people practice at 102 seconds or so. And that 6 seconds might not seem like a lot, but added up over time, it actually ends up giving you 10 minutes of buffer during each section of the bar exam. So that lets you go to the bathroom, that lets you do any number of things. You know, you just need to be flexible. Gives you some time to maybe review some questions. And anyway, so another thing that sets us apart, and this might seem weird, but students have actually found this to be really helpful. We didn't do it initially. I mean, I didn't do it for myself because the stuff that I put together, I mean, they were just hack job personal outlines for my own use. And these are just way better than what I had when I was going to law school and studying for the bar. But we give people the option of listening to the audio with classical music in the background or without classical music. And we actually have unique classical songs for each subtopic to, we believe, further help with chunking. And so you have different levels of sensory tolerance. Some people like to study in silence. Other people like to study with soft instrumental background music. Other people can listen to like loud music with vocals. I'm kind of in the middle of that. And so for people that want some soft background music, we incorporate that into our audio with some classical music. And so that's another thing that kind of sets us apart. So here's the outline that shows you that picture that we saw on the main page. And you can see how it kind of goes through. Here's all these symbols: a green card, a grad cap, a stethoscope, tickets to Tonga, and a magical law book. And what do these things all stand for? And then on the intermediate floor, we have all these things. And what do they stand for? Now, one thing you won't see here is an additional awesome thing that the audio does is it repeats the really critical stuff. And so at the end of, anytime you're hit with a bunch of information, it will ask you, okay, what was on that first floor again? What were those items? And, you can think through, okay, what was a stethoscope, tickets to Tonga, magical law book? Okay, now what do all those things stand for? And so you get this redundancy that's not just accidental or incidental redundancy, which is by and large the most common redundancy we see in the world in publication materials. People are overly verbose. I mean, they just say too much and they don't cut to the chase. And we have what we call strategic redundancy. If we're repeating something, it's on purpose and it's very deliberate. And there's strategic redundancy littered throughout our outlines. And we incorporate positive psychology and thinking into our outlines, and and some of the ways are very subtle. I'll give you an example. I don't know about you, but when I've been studying, for different things growing up, there are often times where I learn something and I don't want to forget it. And so I talk to myself in a very negative way and I say, don't forget so-and-so's name. Don't forget that. Don't forget I got to take out the garbage, right? And this negative self-talk, it might sound like a hokey thing, but negative self-talk can really hold you back. And positive, there's been research about just positive thinking and positive self-talk. And we want to incorporate the best of all the research that's out there in terms of memorization. And so we don't say, don't forget this. Instead, we say things like, you'll remember this for our repeat. So you'll remember this. Hug, hinge voting rights, use race, give anyone anything. You might have noticed this coloring here. What's going on with that? So there's a lot of space that's wasted in explaining how different elements work together. So there are some times where you have a rule that has multiple parts that are all interdependent. They're all necessary. You have to have A, B, and C in order to get D. And there's other times where they're independently sufficient. And so A, B, or C, so A or B or C is enough to get you D. And so in order to communicate that lightning fast to people who use our product, we came up with this coloring scheme. And we used orange for OR logic, right? If it's independently sufficient, if any of these things are sufficient or any of these things are no-nos in and of themselves, we're going to use OR. So we're going to use the orange. If it is something where they're interdependent, you got to have all of them, we use green. And it was hard to come up with a color that could communicate what we were going for there. For AND logic, there's no color that really begins with A. And so what we came up with green, and that was for avocado. So you've got oranges and avocados. And I recognize that's kind of a little bit of a stretch, but it works. So AND logic, you got avocado coloring, and OR logic, you've got orange coloring, and those are just for the mnemonics, just so you understand where the mnemonics are. There are sometimes, though, where our mnemonics are just lists of related things that you need to keep together, and they're neither interdependent or independently sufficient. And so for those, we actually just leave the coloring out. And so you'll notice that as well. Somebody said early on, I want to say it was right after we did our MPRE, all we had was the MPRE at first, which is, if you're not aware, it's the ethical portion of the bar exam that you have to take in every state. So we launched that as our beta, as kind of like a soft launch, and people really were excited about that. But one feedback we got was, hey, I love the audio outlines, but it would be really nice to have visual outlines that I can review when I can't listen. You know, I'm just sitting somewhere where I can glance down at my phone, and maybe it's just not the right setting where I can put my headphones in, or I just want to emphasize the visual aspect of learning over the audio a little bit more. And so we created flashcards for all of our key mnemonics that go with our audio outlines, and are pretty nifty. And so you can do all this on your mobile device too if you need to. You don't have to do it online, and then there's a place where you can take notes and have them for later. So that's a little bit around Crushendo. I'd show you some practice questions, but because we actually get all our questions from the NCBE, the National Conference of Bar Examiners, the people that make the actual bar exam, we have a very strict licensing agreement with them. And so I can't share with you our multiple choice questions or our essay questions or our performance test questions because of that licensing agreement. But what I can tell you are a couple nifty things about them. We break our questions into topics, so they're easy to access, and we also put the most recent essay questions first. So you're going through the more recent content, which is usually more telling and helpful. And then with our practice multiple choice questions, we give you only 102 seconds on our time test. We have some practice sets, is what we call them, where you just do one question at a time and you immediately get an explanation, and you kind of zero in and you're just learning the material. And then we have some quizzes where, and I won't go into any of them, but then we have these quizzes that are timed, and they're timed aggressively to get you up to a pace where you have that little buffer zone that I've been talking about when you get into the actual exam. And so instead of 108 seconds per question, you get only 102. And you want to we're practicing the pacing so that you can move forward with confidence when you're in the bar exam. And we've got some full-on exams from the past MBEs. We have thousands of practice questions. We've only got about 1,800 or so MBE questions, but that is more than enough for the vast majority of people in preparing for the bar exam. And we do have a little study plan that guides you through what to do if you're studying full-time, and it's actually just a little one-sheeter you can print out and you can just work through. And at your own pace, if you're starting early, you can just start from the top and, okay, watch the MBE tips and tricks video, and then do civil procedure steps 1 through 3, and there's a little key that explains what those things are. All right, so I have been yakking for a long time. I'm going to stop the share, and I think it'd be best to maybe do some Q&A, and then Jazz, if you're okay, if we maybe move the offers just to the very end and take some Q&A first, or I don't know, maybe people will need to check out, and if they do, we should give them some.
I think, how y'all doing? Y'all feeling good? Y'all can hang with us for maybe like 10, 15 more minutes? I think y'all doing okay. Y'all had a lot of good comments. Okay, we got it all in. Yes, I'm good. Hanging in. Okay, okay. So yeah, we did have some Q&A, and we also had a few comments which were really interesting. But thank you, Adam. That was really, really good, and you definitely took me back.
Hopefully you didn't get to like some PTSD, where you're just like, oh, revive all those feelings of the bar experience. But
you know what? I used to joke and say that after law school, I hated reading. And I kind of just got over that. And maybe I would have got over a little bit more easier if, I was more so listening to things more than I was constantly just reading.
Yeah, I mean, my personality, I can't sit at a desk or stare at a screen all the time. Like, I just wither away, like a part of my soul dies. And so I needed to figure out a way to get out and about. And so
and don't forget your eyesight. I mean y'all see, I don't know if Adam has contacts in or anything, but one of us is wearing glasses and the other one isn't. I'm just saying, like,
this is actually very deceptive. Yeah, so I've got contacts.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just, I want to blame it mostly on genetics, but as an attorney or, staying up, working 80 to 100 hours a week, getting Crushendo started, it takes a toll. You're popping a lot of eye drops in. Anyway, but I have stayed very fit, and that's been really a blessing. So.
Yeah, I can't really say me too on that
one. You got a very fit smile, and that's what matters most, right? So yeah, any particular questions for me or for Jazz? And
a lot of good comments.
And somebody asked a question earlier about does the LSAT really predict how well you'll do in law school? And there definitely is some research showing correlations there. And I think in particular, the logic and reasoning and the reading comprehension type aspects of the LSAT are very, the skills that are tested there are crucial during law school. But a more interesting correlation, and so I work as a director of external relations over at BYU Law School, which is where I graduated from law school. They let me come back and do some stuff there, which is awesome and really fun. But I've been able to rub shoulders with people who dig in very deeply into what are the indicators of bar prep success. How can we make sure our students all pass the bar? And the strongest data point in terms of being able to predict whether or not someone is going to pass the bar is their grades in law school. Not their LSAT score, not which school they're going to, but their grades in law school. And so using things like Jazz's 1L Success Academy, using Crushendo to help you during your finals prep is paving a good path, at least in terms of statistics, toward passing the bar exam. So I just thought that was super interesting that GPA was so strongly correlated, but a lot of that makes sense, right? Like if you're willing to put in the work to get good grades, you're willing to put in the work to do the practice questions, stay dedicated, and pass the bar exam. So
for sure. And I would when people ask me, like, does the LSAT predict how you're going to do in law school? Of course, I say absolutely not. With my 144, they did not predict that I would, finish my first semester on the dean's list and all that good stuff. But what I will say is the LSAT, if you can really master it before you go to law school, I can almost guarantee you're going to have a good sense of discipline before you start law school. And that is how you prepare for law school. You develop that discipline. And if you do the LSAT correctly, you're going to develop some discipline, and you're going to figure out how to study when you don't feel like studying. That's what the LSAT is going to teach you. And if you can learn that before you get to law school, it's going to be so helpful once you get to law school, because law school is one big game of doing it even when you don't feel like it. That's the name of the game. Raphael, earlier and I think Adam talked about this a little bit, but just to go back to your question about when to start the LSAT law school process, you're graduating with your bachelor's next June. So if you visit our website, and this isn't just for you, this is for everyone. If you go to jazztalkslaw.com, you'll receive our free law school application timeline, which really just breaks down the whole process. Like the moment you say, I want to go to law school, okay, this is the first thing you need to do. This is the second thing you need to do. And it really breaks it down. And it also discusses like from when. So for you, from like your junior years when you would start that timeline. The game workbook. How did you guys support yourself financially during law school? Yeah, so just like in college, you get refund checks. In my case, my refund checks were loans, but nonetheless, it was like a $10,000 refund check, which I used to pay all my bills, and I had more than enough, being that I was in Macon, Georgia, and the rent and things aren't, that expensive. And even with like securing my apartment, of course, they want to see like your income and things like that. Most schools around, most apartments that are in close proximity to your actual college or law school or whatever, they'll take your financial aid letter showing the breakdown of, your refund checks and all that type of stuff. So I hope that helps. And I will also say, people ask me like, can you work while you're in law school? If you're part-time, yeah, you can. But if you're a full-time student, this is how I explain it. Law school is your full-time job, your part-time job, your side hustle, and your Uber job. So keep that in mind before you think you can like really like work during law school. And now my second and third year, I did do some like side jobs. So like I worked in our law library, and then I actually worked for a firm at one point. But my first year, I didn't do anything. But like I said, your school is very generous with the living expense package that they put together. So yeah, the loans are a lot. I agree, but my whole focus with Jazz Talks Law is to get you guys into law school with scholarship. Don't be like me. Don't graduate law school with $100,000 worth of debt. Don't do it. I didn't have Jazz Talks Law. I didn't have anyone telling me I didn't have to pay for law school. So yeah. Difference between part-time day and part-time evening. Can one work full-time and attend part-time day? Yes, Princess, to answer your question, you can. The difference is part-time day, they literally just take classes during the day. Part-time evening, your classes are going to be in the evening. That's the only real difference. So most of your evening students are those who work like during the day, like 9 to 5 or something. Part-time day are those who maybe work at night or work in the evening, and they can take their classes during the day. That's the only real difference. It was great. Really good. Thank you. When should a personal statement be written? Well, you always write a personal statement when you're applying to law school. And I didn't mention this during the webinar, but in addition to the 1L Success Academy workbook, we have the personal statement workbook, which you should definitely check out. It has been a godsend for a lot of people probably in this chat. But you always write a personal statement. You always, and I would say we need to create a new standard with the diversity statement as well, because I made the mistake of not writing it, and I think I was just being lazy. And I think a lot of us are just like lazy, like, oh, it's optional, like whatever, I'm just not going to do it. But you definitely want to write a diversity statement as well. And a lot of people don't realize, yeah, you're diverse because of your gender or because of your race, but you're also diverse because you were homeschooled, or you're diverse because you're an Army rat, so you've lived all over, or you're diverse because of your natural hair. Like if I could go back, I would write a diversity statement about my natural hair, like point blank. That would be so dope. Oh, good. She said the workbook was a great help. So happy to hear that. Does part-time enrollment affect your scholarship opportunity? I was about to say no, but it depends on the school. Some schools still offer scholarships for their part-time students, because at the end of the day, when you graduate, your degree doesn't, I'm sorry, not your degree, your Juris Doctor doesn't say part-time, like it's a Juris Doctor. info@jazztalkslaw.com. There's my email. Oh, she loves the emails. Great. Okay, guys. Well, I think we're going to close out tonight. Thank y'all so much for joining me. You know, I wanted to make sure I represented, make sure my future lawyers represented, and y'all did yourselves once again. Thank you. Hopefully I can have more sponsored webinars, more speakers, and just special guests. So thank y'all so much. Have a good evening. DM me on Instagram, Twitter, email me, like whatever you prefer. But we'll talk soon. All right, y'all. Have a good one.